So in New Orleans, there's like all of these swaths of places that are still nothing, right? They're hoping to starve those communities off, and maybe they'll die, go away, and they'll take the land, and it's like totally messed up, and it's every kind of game you can think of that feels very old school and wrong. But in many places that got hit by the tsunami, they had these lightweight, affordable, nice-looking housing that got put up fairly quickly. There was people tried to put in place very quickly sort of like a community space and just places that were actually like inviting, like you'd want to live there, right? And that technology exists, but a lot of times there's a line between like the so-called third world technology and what happens globally and then what happens here and how we learn from that. And I know that there's some people in the room who sort of work globally, and maybe there's other folks we can learn from, and we don't have to like break it down now. But one question for us is who might be some of the irony is that many of those places that do that are based in the U.S. and go outside the U.S. and we don't talk to them. That are there institutions or groups that sort of do this kind of work globally that maybe don't get play in the U.S. that maybe we should be learning from? Are there ways for us to think about this question of equity, beauty, and some standards like, you have the green school standards like the Gold Star LEED standards. Are there some standards we should be thinking about in planning generally for communities that say, look, you can't just be throwing crap up in our communities that's not pretty, too? Like, because basically they say, well, you know what, colored people or poor people, you're just lucky you're getting a building, don't even ask us to be pretty. And then also, how do we connect with our local artists and folks to be a part of that process, right? Like with the public murals programs and some of the other things, like how do we think about those things together? Tag, you're in.
I want to. I'll start at the top, and because it's funny, ironically enough, in this room I'm representing the art world. I work for this thing, Design Studio for Social Intervention, and a lot of what we do is bring artists and activists and academics together to think across their disciplines and ways of understanding the world to solve social problems. And one of the big conversations we're organizing right now is called Life Lab, and a lot of what you guys are talking about falls under this particular project we're working on. And there are a lot of people who are literally, who from the foreclosure crisis have been starting to think about, well, let's break up the conception of the house. Like, why is it that we conceive of the house as this place with 2 or 3 rooms and a bathroom and a kitchen? Like, would it be possible to sort of design these completely new spaces where maybe bathrooms are shared as art installations to begin to start to put out new conceptions of what lived life might look like? And there are folk who are connecting, sort of thinking about farming and thinking about food, but also thinking about the growing of food as installation, almost like art installation work, in order to get more people to see themselves reflected in what's possible with food. And it was funny because when we were just having a conversation out at lunch, and one of the things I was thinking when you were talking about food, I was thinking, oh, it'd be an interesting art project to talk to St. Louis folk who are from the South about all of their, because so many people in the place where I grew up, she's working in Missouri, I'm from St. Louis, and a lot of people have lots of stories that they tell about wild field peas. Like Mama and her friends tell a lot of stories about purple peas and how they grew up eating purple peas. And so I was like, well, how interesting would it be to do a conceptual art project where you have people go and find the peas that they grew up on and plant them and have them grow for an art project in the heart of St. Louis. So it functions as a food project, it functions as an art project, it functions as a story, and it functions as this way to sort of reclaim space. So there are art folk who are trying to think this way, but we aren't in conversation with policy people. So I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's happening now. I was just like, oh, we're trying to have the same conversation. And then this piece here around how can we use our culture in building community. It's funny, we Also have been having this conversation in this particular part of the art world around subjectivity and like who gets to be and how are our subjectivities constructed. So that's the way we're talking about it, but it really gets back to this thing that a lot of artists and a lot of people who are doing work in cultural work don't see the work that they're doing as work that should be paid for. They think about it in the sense of a gift economy. And they don't think about their bodies as having value but having significance. And so my question is, and so I'll tell one concrete example. One of my boys is actually a medicine man. He's a healer. And most of what he wants to do with his life, or he should be doing with his life, is healing. But that contradicts with, the fact that, he's a grown man and he don't want to live on his mom and daddy's couch. Me and his mom and his dad are cool, and they're like, we don't want you living on a couch, it's mad love. But, and so if he got to be who he was and society were organized such that everything he needed to live were taken care of in order for him to do what he needs to do in terms of healing, like what might be the ecosystemic sort of benefits from that. And then if we look at that as a petri dish and we begin to think about other people and who they need to be, if we begin to start to case those people out, like you think about people who are doing second line work, or you think about people who grew up in jazz families or whatever, what if you didn't think about them as just needing to have value based on what we think about as economic value, but if you thought about them having significance based on what they contribute to the ecosystem of that site-specific place, how might that shift how you construct life? So those are the kind of questions we're trying to play with and begin to model in real space and time, like with housing, with food, with identity, with energy, and with what we're referring to as the commons. So common spaces like where people can eat and hang out, or we're playing with ideas of like, what if nobody had to have a TV and from 7 to 10 in one place, anytime you want to look at something, there was a common room, and it was like a big screen, and we saw it as an installation, like people could come and all watch Seinfeld or all watch whatever show they want to watch. But it's not so much that we want everybody to live like that. We just want to create these little modules so that people can see that it's possible. And then our idea is if we can get 4 or 5 of those sort of nodes up, those little sort of instantiations, like these ideas of how we can organize life differently, maybe people will pick it up because they can actually see how it could work and they can touch it, and we might be able to turn it into policy. So those are some of the ideas that are coming from the people who are thinking about this purely, not purely, but primarily from performance art, conceptual art, and design. And I just want to say that that's happening too.